In Buddhism, there is the concept of Nirvana, a state in which we achieve perfect quietude, freedom, happiness, and liberation from worldly suffering and attachments. The Stoics have eudaimonia, the ultimate state of being, and this state of being is achievable by all, and it is achievable by you right now. Welcome back to The Everyday Stoic. I'm William Mulligan, and today we will be talking about eudaimonia. It is a Greek word that the Stoics used, which means human flourishing. Ultimately, it is the state that all Stoics would try to achieve, whether it was Epictetus, a slave, or Marcus Aurelius, an emperor. They all went for the same goal of eudaimonia. This is what they revered as the greatest form of character, and this is achievable by you right now, and I'll show you how. All Stoics have the moral obligation to strive towards eudaimonia, a journey that requires them to harmoniously seek to improve their character and to do their best to ensure that virtue, which includes justice, is made manifest in their thoughts and actions. Kai Whiting. The Stoics believed that this state of eudaimonia was not achieved through externals such as wealth or fame, or even through the avoidance of externals like pain and suffering, but it was achieved through the internal, through building our character. So this state of eudaimonia is achievable by you right now, in fact. And I'll explain how, but firstly, what is eudaimonia? Eudaimonia is a Greek term that translates to a state of being that encompasses terms such as happiness, flourishing, fulfillment, well-being, and the good life. The Stoics believed that possession and practice of the four cardinal virtues, wisdom, justice, temperance, and courage, was the true path to eudaimonia. So I see this eudaimonia as human flourishing. It is you when you have reached your perfect state of you. It is you living up to your full potential. There is the story of Zeus giving us these gifts that he gave humans, and when you're living in accordance with eudaimonia, you are using these gifts from Zeus to their fullest. You're being the perfect version of you. And one thing that is interesting about eudaimonia is that it's not only achievable by everyone, and I believe it's achievable easier by people that are not rich or famous, because these things get in the way of eudaimonia, but also they're achievable by you right now. So there is this diagram of the eudaimonia triangle. At the top it says take responsibility. At the bottom left it says live with arete, and the bottom right it says focus on what you can control. So if you follow this diagram, this triangle, you can achieve eudaimonia. So on the bottom right, it says focus on what you can control. This refers to the Stoic concept of the dichotomy of control. I'll explain that further in a future video, but the concept really is to understand that some things are in your control and some things are not. As Epictetus says, within our control, our motivation, our opinion, our desire, and in a word, whatever is of our own doing. Not within our control, our office, our reputation, our wealth, our health, and in a word, whatever is not of our own doing. So when you understand this dichotomy of control, it leaves you free. You can focus on the things that you have control over, and you no longer need to worry, have anxiety, or fret over things outside of your control. And then, the bottom left, it says, live with arete. So arete, in simple terms, is virtues. These virtues that the Stoics taught of justice, wisdom, temperance, and courage. You live with these virtues. They're your guiding faculty. Rather than living the opposite with vice, things like cowardice, greed, malice, you don't live with these things. You live with arete. And then at the top, take responsibility. So you're living with virtue, you're focusing on what you can control. Sometimes you still make mistakes for your actions. Sometimes you do not live with arete or focus on what you can control. And that's where you take responsibility. So eudaimonia is achieved within this triangle. Now it sounds very difficult, it sounds very complex and hard to achieve. It sounds like something only the great Marcus Aurelius could achieve, but actually it's achievable by you right now. And many of these concepts like arete, dichotomy of control, and virtue, vice, You may have a slight understanding of them, but the Stoics had a different understanding. So if you want to learn more, then subscribe and you'll learn more about these subjects that can only help adhere to your knowledge on Stoicism and how to use it as a practical guide to live in accordance with nature and live the good life, what we call eudaimonia. So, arete means choosing every day courage over cowardice, justice over injustice, temperance over intemperance, and wisdom over ignorance. So you're always given these choices and you follow arete rather than vice. And this is the first step towards eudaimonia. Aristotle believed that a person who was living with virtue and who had developed a way of life aligned with things like courage, temperance, wisdom, and justice was practicing a life of good and will ultimately end up happy and content. Marcus Aurelius says in Book 8 of the Meditations, "You know from personal experience that in all your detours, the good life was nowhere to be found, not in logic or wealth or prestige or sensual pleasures, nowhere. So where is it to be found? In doing what human nature requires. And how is one to do this? By adhering to principles that guide your impulses and actions. What principles? Those that are concerned with good and bad, and states that nothing is good for a human being except what makes him honest, moderate, courageous, and self-reliant, and that nothing is bad except that which inculcates the opposite qualities in him." The Stoics had a concept of good and bad, and what's good, what's bad, everything else is indifferent. So vice alone is bad, virtue alone is good, everything else is indifferent. The idea is that you can never have too much wisdom, never have too much courage, never have too much temperance or justice. And things like wealth, fame, reputation, even health, these are indifferent. And you might say, well, health's a good thing. If there is an evil dictator that is harming the masses, if he is in good health, then this is not a good thing for the masses. So health is indifferent. It can be good, can be bad. It's up to the person, what they make of it. And then vice alone is bad. Things like cowardice, injustice, this is never a good thing. Having these things is never good. So when I say words like good and bad, this is what I'm referring to as good and bad. When Marcus Aurelius says, live a life of good, not a life of bad, this is what he is referring to. So throughout history, people have always tried to chase certain things that they see as happiness. And in today's modern age, I think popularity and fame is seen as the greatest achievement. And that comes from seeing our favorite celebrities, seeing TikTokers, Instagrammers, seeing these people that have so much attention on them. We see them and we want to be like them. So I think in today's modern age, this is the ultimate goal, according to the masses. But as the Stoics said, and as I say, eudaimonia is the ultimate goal, because this is not based on any externals. It's based on the internal. Everything can be stripped away from you and you will still have this state of eudaimonia. So you can always achieve this greatest good, no matter what is presented to you, no matter what background you come from, no matter who you are. You can always have this state of eudaimonia. But things like fame and wealth, first of all, you can't control them to a full extent. You can try have influence over them. But secondly, these feelings are fleeting. And everyone can attest to this, is that you post a new video, post a picture, and you get loads of likes. You're like, wow, wicked, loads of likes. And then you keep checking it, the likes stop coming in, it makes you feel bad. And then the next thing you post, you want the same, if not more amount of likes. And when you don't get it, it leads to feelings of emptiness and feelings of sadness because you didn't get this thing you wanted. And people keep chasing this fame, expecting to feel good. But it is clear, we see with these celebrities that have the most amount of fame unimaginable to us that we can only dream of. So they have this thing that we want, but in abundance, yet they're not happy, they're miserable. Oftentimes more miserable, and they go down the path of drugs and acting out on vice because of this misery. So we can see that fame and fortune is not happiness. And it's clear to all of us that this is not the path. And yes, fame and fortune can help you in many ways, but it does not equal happiness. What does equal happiness? Eudaimonia, the state that is achievable by all. So according to this view, says Donald Robertson, who is my favorite Stoic teacher, according to this view, true happiness is constant and self-generated. It comes from within, as the cliche goes. For example, An authentic sense of happiness may come from the knowledge that one has acted freely and with genuine integrity, courage and wisdom, in accordance with one's highest psychological strengths and values. The pleasure that comes from indulging in sex, food, drink, drugs, or glorifying in the praise from others is passive in the sense that it depends upon external stimulation. It is therefore transient and not entirely under our control, but depends upon fortunate circumstances. The happiness that comes from loving truth, reason, integrity, and wisdom, by contrast, is autonomous. It depends only upon itself. So that is from Donald Robertson. And it's the idea that people try to achieve all these things in life. They work so hard trying to achieve all these things, and then they get it and it leaves them feeling empty. They don't feel great with what they have. You know, like Tyson Fury wanted to be heavyweight champion. When he got it, he says that's when he felt the worst. That's when he spiraled into depression and drugs. This is when he was at his lowest, because it was only the hope of getting this thing that actually kept him going forward. And then when he got this thing, like I always say, when you achieve your goals, you lose the hope that came along with it. So now he's lost all his hope and he feels bad. It's no longer carrying him. How can it be, this thing he had in his head his whole life, this goal he wanted, this ultimate happiness, where he'd look at other heavyweights and be like, I want to be like them. How can it leave him feeling worse? Because, like Donald Robertson says, it's transient, it's fleeting. It's not real in a sense. It's not real as your internal feelings. And these are the things that you can control. So you have control over being virtuous, living in this eudaimonia triangle. You don't have control over the external. This is the important part. This is the bit most people are watching for. How can you actually live this life in eudaimonia? How can you achieve this amazing ultimate state of being? And I promised at the start that you can achieve it, but you can also achieve it right now, as you're watching the video. Zeno of Citium, as quoted by Diogenes Laertius in his eminent philosopher's book, he says, well-being is realized by small steps, but is truly no small thing. And Epictetus says in his discourses, if virtue promises good fortune, peace of mind and happiness, certainly also the progress towards virtue is progress towards each of these things. Zeno is saying that well-being is achieved little steps at a time, but it is no little thing. And then Epictetus is saying that if being virtuous leads us to eudaimonia, if by being virtuous right now we get to eudaimonia, surely being virtuous on this path is eudaimonia, in a sense. He's saying by being virtuous right now, we have eudaimonia. The way I see it is if instead of this triangle, this eudaimonia triangle, there is this golden ray of light shining from the heavens, this warm ray of light, and it's beaming right in front of you. It's always there, and it's waiting for you to step into it. This golden ray of light is eudaimonia. It's your perfect self. It is you when you are living up to the greatest sense of yourself. So it's right in front of you. And the belief was that living within this triangle, you can get to that light. And people put this off because they go, well, what's the point? I get it at the end of my life. I step into this golden ray of light of eudaimonia and go, wow, I've achieved it. What was the rest of life for? It was this path towards it. No, what they're saying, what the Stoics are saying is, if you live within this triangle, you know, right now, this very moment, you decide to live with arete, you focus on what you can control, you take responsibility, you're stepping right into the golden light. That is eudaimonia. And the thing is, if you live with these things, this golden light will be your path. You'll be walking through this path of life. And I recently read a story about a guy that was on a boat and he was talking to this wise sage, and he offered the wise sage an orange for a piece of wisdom. So the sage says, nothing is set in stone, but they're set on a dirt road. If you roll your wagon in the same path too much, it'll soon be the only path you can take without struggling. So you step into this golden ray of light. This is the path that your wagon is taking through the dirt road of life. And you're following virtue, you're focusing on what you can control, you're being a good person. And you keep going through this mud of life in this golden ray of light. And you're setting it more into this path. The wheels are getting deeper and deeper into this path. And eventually it becomes harder to steer off this path because these virtues, this way of life that you're living, this eudaimonia, becomes habit, it becomes your character. And I've always said this about Stoicism. At the start, you do have to look at these quotes. You do have to look at these guiding principles, and you have to say, how can this help me today? But the more you do that, it becomes a habit, it becomes you. You become a Stoic. But the same is true for the opposite. If you keep steering off the path out of this golden ray of light, you act out of vice and greed, you don't do what is good for the greater good, then you set this path of bad habits into the dirt road, and it becomes harder to steer off that path. And you can always steer off the path, no matter how deep you go. That's the great thing about Stoicism. No matter how deep you've gone into this path of vice, you can steer off and achieve eudaimonia. So, right now, step into that golden light, the eudaimonia triangle. Live this life that the great Stoics are trying to achieve. Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, these great people were trying to step into this golden ray of light. And they did. Sometimes they veered off path, sometimes they didn't, but they stepped into this golden ray of light because this is human flourishing. And it's achievable by all. And the most amazing thing, just a personal opinion, I think people like Marcus Aurelius, he's this great powerful figure. He actually probably had a harder time stepping into this golden ray of light. This perfect ideal that he put in front of him, he found it harder because he had all this power, he had all this access that he could be greedy, he could be selfish, he could act upon anger. It was easier for him. He was without restraint, yet he restrained himself. He could do anything. His vices could drag him to do the cruelest of things. So it was harder for him to achieve this eudaimonia, I believe. That's just my personal thought. So hopefully you right now, sat in front of your computer or on your phone, you can achieve it ultimately right now. And it can lead you down this golden path where the light of eudaimonia shines you upon your perfect self. Thank you for watching today's video. I hope it helped. I may have spoke of some words in this video that you don't fully understand. So if you subscribe, hit that notification bell, I will be going in depth on all of these subjects like sympatheia, eudaimonia, arete, ataraxia, good, bad, indifferent, vice, virtue. Even the Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Zeno, Epictetus, who are these people? And you can learn so much about Stoicism, which ultimately only adheres to this path that you're taking of becoming the best version of yourself, being a good person, solving many of life's questions that you have. So thank you for watching. If you want to support what I'm doing, then please consider becoming a YouTube member. I'm very thankful to all members that are supporting this channel, and I have a custom video coming out on the topic of anger, but then I'm making another one not long after. So the goal is to do 2 to 6 of these videos a month where I deep dive into subjects and topics based around Stoicism or personal anecdotes and life stories of how you can use Stoicism. These videos, I always say, these videos are going to be quite boring, not very well edited, not as fast-paced like you see on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. It's going to be very slow, but very in-depth. So if that sounds like something you would like, then become a member and you'll have access to that. So thank you for watching. If you made it this far into the video, like I said on the last video, just comment Memento Mori. It helps get my engagement up. It shows me that people are watching this far and caring. Also, Memento Mori means to remember you're mortal or remember death. And it is this Memento Mori, this thought on death, that helps you live a better life, oddly. Sounds like an oxymoron, but really try it. And Memento Mori is also the code for the Memento Mori life calendars, where you can get 10% off on the Everyday Stoic shop. So if you want 10% off, go to the shop, Memento Mori, code Memento Mori, and you can get 10% off. This life calendar, I filled out my first square on 27, and when I filled it in, I actually posted it on my story today. I just thought, wow, what a week. And I think it was kind of a perfect week. Not that I'm going to judge my week, but it was kind of perfect. I lived in this golden ray of eudaimonia all week. It was brilliant. And I thought, next week, let's carry that same energy. But also, I might not get the full week, because that's the point of these squares. I might only get today. So be appreciative right now. Be fully grateful for the moment I have right now. So thank you for watching. Subscribe. Leave a comment if you liked the video. Head over to my Instagram at TheEverydayStoic or at MulliganBrother. I'm sure you'll find some great stuff there. And thank you for watching.